Good morning, everyone. Jim Williams, Sean Miller here today. And it's a Thursday, but there's all kinds of stuff going on. There's soccer, there's bowl games, and there's Thursday night football. So, plenty to talk about. Morning, Sean. Anything on your mind as we start this Thursday morning?
No, I was interested to watch some of the games. I know you watched that PSG game
Uh huh.
yesterday. Neymar killed all the bets, but Mbappe penalty with in the 6 minute of extra time.
Uh huh.
Big win for them. Manchester City, big win. Uh, I saw some of the other games in France. I thought those were pretty interesting. To me, uh, once again, I like the French league because being sport doesn't have a lot of stuff that they show.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have as much as they did before, but they have a huge focus on Ligue 1 and the
Mm-hmm.
Turkish league, obviously. Um, and they show these games at night. It's great. They'll show them during the week. Monday night they'll show three games in a row,
Right.
uh, which I think is interesting. So I actually like watching the games, and I kind of take an interest in how the league goes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, obviously huge fan of Mbappe and stuff, but yeah, it's an interesting league. And today, you got so much stuff: bowl games and soccer and NFL and
Mm-hmm.
NBA and kinds of everything, college basketball. So
NHL. Yes.
NHL, yeah, if anybody cares about that anymore, please give us a
Please, please
shout.
drop by and say hi. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's Amadeus. I think,
Hey, Amadeus.
How's it going, guys?
Amadeus. Do you watch a lot of the regular season hockey games, or you more of a you focus more when it gets towards the playoffs?
No, I don't watch regular season. Absolutely not. Like maybe if they're showing the game, I bet on, but that's about it.
And I'm the same way with the NBA. It's like, to be honest, I'd rather watch college basketball. But
Yeah,
um, as we've said before, NBA games are decided in the final 4 minutes of the game. Yes, you could, one team's up 20, the other team rallies, and it all ends up in the final 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. But yeah, until March, I'll take a look at March when things might be getting a little close to who's going to make the playoffs and seeds and all that sort of stuff. But um, you know, give me a call in March. So we'll see how that goes. But we do have a lot of fun stuff today. I'm going to throw some stuff up here. Let's start with this afternoon Pinstripe Bowl, which of course is played at Yankee Stadium, Syracuse, Minnesota. It's got to be a home game for Syracuse, for all intents and purposes. And Minnesota flies over to play them. I'm not a big fan of bowl games being played in baseball stadiums, but last night being one where you had Oregon beating North Carolina 28-27 in the final 16 seconds of the game. But if you saw how the field was, so messed up from the rain that, the guy who kicked the extra point uh, for the win for Oregon bounced it off the upright. It's like nothing was easy when it came to the kicking game last night.
Yeah, they were having big problems draining the field. I believe it was. There was a
Yeah,
lot of like just moisture on the field, and you could see all like the grass and dirt was kicking up and stuff.
right.
But yeah, when he hit that up or when he hit that upright, I wasn't watching. All I had was looking down at my phone, and I heard the dong, and I was like, no way, this is going to overtime. But then Gus Johnson was screaming how it went in, like it bounced off the post and
Right.
in, and I was like, oh man, that would have been so good an overtime game.
Doink. Yeah. It was wild, and I was listening to the Oregon broadcast at the time, and the guy goes, "He hit the post." but it within, so it's like
Like watching
at
a
first,
hockey game.
right? It's like at first you don't know, it's like you hear the doink and you hope that, oh, don't tell me, it went out. I mean, having been one of those guys who covered FSU and did FSU games when it was wide right and wide left, I'm getting, I'm kind of used to that, but that would have been a heck of a way to end up, going into overtime. The guy misses an extra point.
Yeah.
So Syracuse, Minnesota. I'm not sure. Syracuse had a much better year than anybody expected. And, with all their alumni and all that stuff going into the city to play this game, where's Minnesota in this deal?
I mean, I actually, Syracuse, didn't really end the year very well. They started so well and then, just were basically atrocious for a month. They got that win over BC. I think this Minnesota team actually, ended the year pretty well and they're going to run for a few yards, I think, in this game. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter who's running the ball for him. Obviously Ibrahim, whoever. It's an interesting game. I think Minnesota's got a the spread is pretty high on this game. 10.5.
Wow.
I don't know if
in a bowl game, that's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if Minnesota is going to win by 10.5 points here, but they got lucky too. I mean, it's warming up here in the Northeast. It's going to be 51. Mm-hmm. I mean, next week it's going to be It's going to be basically spring weather here. I guess winter's over. It's going to be 65. It's going to be 55 degrees.
Don't jinx us, Sean. We'll get snow in March.
65 degrees or 55 degrees at night next week, which is fantastic since my electric bill is spiraling after last week. So, but yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Like Syracuse to cover Coactus. Syracuse. I think it's too many points to be honest. 10.5 in a bowl game. I don't know that Minnesota is that much better than them. And Roe, what's up, man? I would probably agree with that. 10.5. If you can get it with that hook, I mean, it's definitely better. I've seen some 11s, which is even better. So I think plus 11 is probably a safe play here.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
I would agree with that for sure. Like you said, Jim, this is pretty much a home game for Syracuse being played in New York there. But we saw Oregon didn't cover the 13 last night. This spread was actually 11 points yesterday, and now it's 10. It's kind of coming down to 10.5. But that's a lot of points in a bowl game. Minnesota was not really an offensive team this year. They were more of a defensive team. Their defense was actually ranked in the top 5 for points allowed for most of the season. But if you look at their strength of schedule, it was absolutely atrocious. Like if you look at their non-conference schedule, obviously New Mexico State had a much better team, but they opened their season with a team that had gone 0-12 basically, the last few years. So obviously, Jerry Kill wasn't putting things together then. Then you look at their conference schedule, like the strongest team they faced is Iowa. They didn't have to play Ohio State. They didn't have to play Michigan. So
they're in the West. So
yeah, so this is like a Minnesota team where, I look at them and say, okay, you had a good year, but you didn't really play anybody strong. And they were actually a team. Every time they got 10 points or more, I was looking to bet against them because I knew even if they won the game, it would be a low-scoring game, something where like they would only put up 20, and they probably wouldn't really give up more than like 10 or 2 touchdowns. But yeah, I could definitely see Syracuse covering in this one.
Yeah, it's one of those games where I think it'll be close. What people forget about bowl games is these guys haven't played football for a month. And so timing and all that other stuff that it takes, to get back in rhythm, it's a difficult thing. Plus, of course, during the week, you've got a bunch of commitments where you practice, but you're also going to, functions that the bowl have put on for the players. And so there's a bit of a distraction in that aspect, which tends to make bowl games a lot closer than one would expect them to be.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's
I agree with that. Yeah. And like here, it's an interesting stat here that Galactus posted Syracuse 6-1 in bowl games. I think sometimes with these teams, you have quarterbacks. Garrett Schrader, obviously a junior, he's out. He'll be back next year, but you want to build for this next year. If Syracuse can get to 8-5, and go into next year, I think with a lot of momentum. Those off-season workouts, I think, are always a lot better after a bowl win when you're trying to build in an ACC that maybe is changing here. Obviously, Florida State and Clemson. It's always going to be tough for Syracuse to get there, but if Syracuse can get to 8 wins, like Louisville, NC State, Wake Forest, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, Duke, maybe the next step is 9 wins and maybe a bigger bowl. So I think it's always a big game for them.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And the ACC is having their problems with regards at this point to getting back to prominence. I mean, you had a situation where Clemson played better this year, but not the usual Dabo Sweeney type Clemson team.
Florida State, I think, is back. I think this is a big game for Florida State. I think this is a massive, massive game for Florida State. If Florida State gets to 10 wins, obviously I grew up as a Florida State fan, so I'm a little biased here. But if Florida State gets to 10 wins and finishes in the top 10 with Mike Norvell and the way that recruiting is going here, I with a win over Oklahoma State, I think this is a massive, massive game. And just
this is actually Oklahoma, not Oklahoma State.
Yeah, Oklahoma. Yeah.
Oklahoma.
The way, and they're 9-3, and the games they lost in the middle of the season, Wake Forest was a 1-score game until the final minute. NC State brutal loss, 2-point loss. Clemson, they were in the whole game. I mean, with Clemson, they're this close to 10-2 or 11-1. If they could make 1 or 2 more plays in those games, maybe they're talking about Florida State being one of those teams. So I think they're close, and I think the ACC needs Florida State to be good. I think when they're down, it's not great for the league. You can't just have Clemson win the league every year and stuff like that. So you need you need Florida State to be good. So but for Coactus at Florida State, I like them today 9.5. Like Washington, I agree with that too. I think they're being underrated here, like by a lot. I don't understand this, but
well, I mean, it's the Alamo Bowl is we'll switch here, Texas, Washington. San Antonio is about 90 miles south of Austin. So we talked about Syracuse having a bowl game. They're going to have a home crowd. They're definitely going to have a home crowd here. But Washington has their quarterback, Michael Felix Jr., ironically, is a kid who played his high school football at Tampa Tech in about 5,000 miles or about 3,500 miles shy of where he ended up in in the Great Northwest. That offense for Washington is really good. I think I'm like you guys. I think they've got a much better chance of beating Texas than people seem to give them credit for.
Yeah, you know what? This is an offense that was averaging almost 50 points a game. Like some of those games they were just scoring unbelievable. Now, obviously, they had a bad defense, so they had to score points to make up for it. But Texas has struggled in a lot of games this year against better defenses. I know they're not going to be seeing one today, but they're going to be missing, their running back, Bijan Robinson, who's arguably one of the best running backs in the country. Mm-hmm. And they're also going to be without their backup too. So I think that's a big blow to the Texas offense. That's really going to weaken their run game. if they don't have the run game, I don't see Quinn Ewers, going ham through the air here. This is this is gonna be a tough one for Texas, that's for sure.
The other thing too is that from a standpoint of Texas and bowl games, they're not necessarily a lock in that, but it's definitely, to me, Washington has the edge here in this game, and it's been a good year for them. And I think that with Michael Felix coming back next year, Sean, you brought up a point about it's that conferences need their marquee teams, like in the ACC. It's got to be Clemson, it's got to be FSU, and I would argue Miami would have to be into that mix. When it comes to the Pac-12 right now, identity is SC and UCLA are leaving, so who are the big dogs? Well, you've got Utah, who has won back-to-back Pac-12 championships. You got Washington, you got Oregon, you got some good teams out there with some good quarterbacks. And so what happens here too, guys, is let's say a Washington wins tonight, and people forget that the portal is still out there and will be staying open until early January. So you might be able to have a kid who's wavering one way or another. And these bowl games are very, very big when it comes to, if you're trying to grab a kid out of the portal, this is where you might be able to get them if you can prove that you're, on national television, that your team is better than, say, a Texas.
Well, Washington, if they win today, they'll win 7 in a row to end the season, and they'll finish 11-2, and they'll finish in the top 10 of the rankings. So between, if Utah goes and wins, they'll have, and USC wins, they'll have 3 teams in the top 10.
Right.
I don't think Oregon's going to get there, but they'll have 4 teams in the top 12, something like that. Oregon State, obviously, is 10-3 here going into their game. So yeah, and Ukulele just committed to Oregon State, which is interesting. So yeah, I think next year that I'm always, you can't just have 2 SEC teams and an ACC team and a Big Ten. It just can't always be like that. Last year when Cincinnati got in, I thought that was huge because, it lets all these, hey, listen, if you run the table in a decent league, you have a chance to get in. Clearly, this year the only 2 unbeaten teams are in the tournament. So last year the unbeaten teams got in the tournament. So if the Pac-12 now, with these, if they can have 4 teams in the top 12 final rankings here going into next year with, all, Penix back and, Caleb Williams back and Ugalele going to Oregon State and, they had 10 wins and all, with 4 or 5 10-win teams here, it makes it, that conference is important. And that conference is so big, obviously, for television, because they're playing all these games at night, Friday nights, Saturday nights. That you gotta have some games, 10:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night, whatever. I think it's the same with college basketball and these sports where I need Gonzaga. Hey, I want to stay up and watch Gonzaga play, or hey, I want to stay up and watch UCLA play. You can't just always have East Coast teams dominate everything. You need the West Coast teams. You need a Northwest team, Washington, to be good. I think, for this to, for this to be a, kind of all-inclusive thing.
Yeah, I would have rather, and I think they deserved it. I think Utah should have been over Ohio State in the Final Four. I mean, Utah's losses was a 1 point win. They beat SC. Their losses, they lost to Florida, which was at the beginning of the season when Florida was actually ranked. It's easy to say, well, Florida's a bad team now. Well, nobody knew it was a bad team when Oregon played them at the Swamp. So, I think. I'm sorry, not Oregon. Utah played them at the Swamp. Uh, I just think Utah's 2 losses, to
And three
me, and winning a three. I'm sorry, 3 losses. The championship, to me, these should be champions. And if you have 5 power conferences, then go ahead, pick between. You got TCU in there from the Big 12. The ACC didn't deserve, a perhaps a bid this year. To me, Utah would be should be there instead of Ohio State. I mean, because Ohio State didn't win the championship of their conference, they lost, pretty convincingly to the conference champion Michigan.
Yeah,
So one loss Ohio State team, not winning your conference championship gets rewarded for what?
I think if Utah, I think if they maybe if they had 2 losses, they made it maybe give them more consideration. Because if you open it to 3 loss teams, then Alabama's going to be crying. I mean, they were already crying.
No, I'm just talking about you have to be the champion of your conference. So the argument then would be between Clemson and Utah.
Well, I think that's why when we go to the 12-team playoff, it's going to be you're going to put more of those teams in.
It'll be better, and it'll be more. It'll be a fairer situation for people.
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to have. I this year I thought for the committee, I mean, they basically just said who are the 4 teams that have 0 or 1 losses, and just said they're pretty, because you could Tennessee beat Alabama,
right?
So I think you could have. This was the year where they just said we're putting the teams in with 0 or 1 loss,
right?
But I think at some point that's why you got to go to the
expanded playoff.
Yeah, because I mean, this year if you put 12 teams in, now you're talking about maybe, Florida State maybe getting in. Obviously they're 13, so that someone would be crying about that. But Washington, Penn State, USC, Kansas State, who actually, Kansas State won the Big 12. I mean. They won the conference, same
right.
thing with them. It's 10-3, and not given much of a chance here against Alabama. But Utah, Clemson, Tennessee. You could argue Tennessee at 10-2 is going to be in, but without their quarterback, probably maybe should be dropped. So maybe you could.
There's also, I mean, that's where a group of 5 team like Tulane, who's going to play USC in the Cotton Bowl, might be in the picture. I'm not saying they would win the title, but I'm certainly saying they would deserve an opportunity to play.
Yep.
Because they beat Cincinnati and UCF, the 2 teams that are headed to the to the Big 12.
Yeah, no, I agree. So
onward to the pro game tonight, Thursday Night Football on Amazon. It is the Cowboys and the Titans. The Titans, this is important for the Titans. In a way, it's important for the Cowboys for seeding. What do you think, Amadeus?
Yeah, this is a huge game. The Titans pretty much have to win it. A loss here would be detrimental. Basically, would give Jacksonville the division. I know they have to play them, I think, in the final game of the season.
Right.
But still, if they lose today and Jacksonville goes and win, I think that's pretty much it's pretty much a division right there. So,
wait, I thought this game doesn't. I was listening to somebody. I was listening to the coach. What's his name?
For who?
Jaguars coach.
Doug Peterson.
Oh yeah, Campbell. Yeah.
They're not. They're like. Next week is win, lose, draw this week for either team. Right. Next week is the game because they play. Right.
Right.
So if Tennessee wins, they win the head-to-head, right? If Jacksonville wins, they win the head-to-head. So these games don't even matter tonight, right?
Well, it would only matter if Jacksonville it would only matter for other teams, not for necessarily Jacksonville.
I mean, I don't think Tennessee wants to go into the Jaguars game losing 6 games in a row, but like, I'm trying to.
You're saying that they're not mathematically out if they lose tonight. Is what I'm saying. Is what you're saying.
Well, no, I mean, basically, I think Tennessee. It's an all marbles game next week for Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah. So both are 7 and 8 right now.
So Tennessee apparently is resting starters tonight.
Yeah, there's no Tannehill. I think they're shutting Tannehill down for the season, though. I saw.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think because
they're resting players tonight again.
It doesn't matter because the game doesn't matter. Next
week. I understand, but I'm just saying, why would you not want to keep that rhythm going? I mean,
they've lost 5 in a row, so I think they just want to be healthy. Because that's what Doug Peterson was saying. He was saying like, yeah, no, we're going to play our starters in this game, and all because they're playing. Who are they playing? Houston, and everyone was like, yeah, right, like. Because if Tennessee loses and goes to 7 and 9, and Houston and Jacksonville gets to 8 and 8, and then Tennessee beats them next week,
right?
I think Tennessee wins the division.
Okay, so, you're right, and but I mean, so you're basically saying you've said it, Sean, a number of times, and Amadeus. We've all looked at it. Jacksonville can't afford to sit those guys because Texas isn't bad.
Yeah, and they want to keep rhythm. I mean, I know you don't want to, I know you want to be healthy and stuff like that, but you want to. I think you got to, if you're Jacksonville, you got to kind of keep your rhythm here because you've won, 4 out of 5, and to get to this point, you don't want to kind of blow it here. But yeah, it's it's an interesting game. I mean. They talked about let me see the predicted.
What's the over under on this game?
39.5.
Okay. I could see the Cowboys scoring that much on Titans.
I mean, look, I think
if they're not going to play their guys.
I think the Jaguars are going to annihilate the Titans next week anyway, so it is what it is. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't think that they're going to. Houston obviously coming off last week. They have projected Week 17 scores. They have the Texans beating the Jaguars pretty easily. So basically, kind of saying I think the Jags might sit some players. But I do think that's why these games are this game tonight is. I mean, I guess.
Is it possible it means more to the Cowboys?
Well, to be honest, I mean, yeah, I guess so. I mean, the Cowboys got to put pressure on the Eagles, if they get to 12-4, but Philadelphia still, Philadelphia wins one of their 2, they're going to win, be the top seed and win. So, Cowboys at this point now can't really go any man, they're probably going to be the 5. So,
right.
I mean, it does just because if they win, they got to puts pressure on the Eagles. In that final week against the Giants, in a game the Giants might have to win, so that's going to be a tough game. Obviously this game against if the Eagles play like they did against Cowboys last week against the Saints this week, you figure they win. But maybe they don't. So it's a bigger game for Dallas. So Dallas has to win to keep the pressure up. I would think Dallas probably especially if Tennessee's sitting players, they're going to annihilate them. So that's why I think that's why the line is so high.
Right. What do you guys think of Malik Willis, the kid out of Liberty?
I like to see him play. Amadeus, I know you kind of liked him from the beginning, right?
Yeah, I liked him at Liberty last year. I thought watching him, he was going to be an NFL starter, and sure enough, the Titans drafted him. But obviously, he hasn't looked great this year. But he hasn't been given many chances to start. So if he's going to be starting in this game, I think it's good experience for him for next year.
You know, the thing too, and this is he's the kind of guy who works very well in a run pass option offense. And that's not what Tennessee runs. So you're asking someone who's, spent his entire college career doing a run pass option offense to come in and play a pro style quarterback. And it's in his DNA. He probably wants to run, a little more than giving him the opportunity to. But if it were me, I would think that Tennessee would want to kind of open that offense up a little bit and give him some options to run, because at the end of the day, when he was at Liberty, he had a very Michael Vick-esque type way of playing football. He's got a good arm, don't get me wrong. The kid can throw. But the kid in space, he scares the living hell out of you. And if you figure you've got Derrick Henry and him to worry about, that would be concerning to me. But I don't think that I know for a fact that Tennessee doesn't have that offense, and whether or not they'll play it, maybe not this year, but maybe next year. And I don't know. It doesn't. They don't seem to be giving him the ability to do what he does best. They're kind of saying, "Here, this is what we want you to do," and it doesn't fit his skill set.
Well, you might get to see a bit of that style you're hoping for tonight, because Derrick Henry is going to be out. So it's a huge loss, obviously, to this Titans offense. And if they can't run that same smash mouth offense without Henry, they might have to come a little more accustomed to Malik Willis's style of play tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. What do you guys think of? On one more NFL note before we move on, the Raiders have benched Derek Carr. Now, interestingly enough, they are going to. Carr left the team because he, quote unquote, didn't want to be a distraction. They still owe him $40 million. So.
Yeah, they're cutting him. I mean, that's
this whole thing is starting to get pretty crazy with the Raiders and Derek Carr.
They got to cut him within 3 days of the Super Bowl to save that money. So that's probably a clear sign at this point that they're getting rid of him. And it's Devontae Adams signed with him because he played with him in college.
Right.
I signed with the Raiders in Carr, so I don't really understand.
Do we see Derek Carr showing up back on another team next year?
Yeah, I think he's had a pretty decent couple years. I mean, I'm sure you'd take him in Arizona, right?
I mean, I'd rather have Baker Mayfield, honestly, but I don't know about Derek Carr. I think you bring up a great point with the Devontae Adams. He's not going to want to be there if Derek Carr is not going to be there. That's the whole reason why he left.
Well, then there's the battle of where do they go? I mean, I'm talking about Vegas. Where do they go? Do they jump into the Baker Mayfield sweepstakes, or how do they play that routine?
They might. Maybe they want to draft a guy.
Well, they drafted a kid last season, off Chase Garbers.
Yeah, but they should have a higher pick this year, right?
True. Yeah.
They're going to be, because they're going to be what? They're like a 4-win team, 5-win team right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Raiders.
The Raiders are 6-9.
They're still in this playoff race.
Oh, 6-9. Oh my God.
So they're in the middle of the bag.
They theoretically have a chance of making the playoffs.
Okay, so then their draft pick's not going to be that high. Yeah, I don't know. Because I read that they were benching Carr to preserve the health for trade value, but you guys think that they're just going to cut him.
That's a joke. I mean, they're
First,
I mean, if you're Tua and you're in your third concussion, I can understand benching him for health reasons.
I don't know.
Derek Carr just hasn't been able to find wide receivers.
I don't know
That's a problem.
because he's going to be if he's got to get cut before then you just kind of hey listen I'll wait till the fourth day after the Super Bowl and try to pick him up. But it is what it is. But, yeah.
Well, they want to trade him, and and teams are looking at it and going, "What are you nuts? We're not trading for Derek Carr. We can get him, like you just said, Sean. 4 days after Super Bowl, we don't have to worry about sending you any draft choices. We'll just wait till you have to cut him, and when you cut him, you'll eat the $40 million."
Yep.
Why in God's name would I want to trade with the Raiders to get a quarterback, Derek Carr as your quarterback, when I could potentially get him as a free agent?
No, it makes perfect sense. Same reason why the Oilers are going to have to trade McDavid at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Because, with 1 year left, he's not staying in Edmonton. You got to get something out of it.
Mm-hmm. You got to pray that, that this is the way it goes. But so we've got a schizophrenic game tonight between the Cowboys and the Titans. The Cowboys have to win to keep pressure on the Eagles. The Titans don't know what the hell to do. So we'll see how that plays out. Is that one of those ones where you look at it and say to yourself, from a wagering standpoint, this is a game I want to stay away from? Or maybe I'll bet the over or whatever. In other words, as professionals, you guys do this for a living. Do you look at a game like that and say, you know what, I'm going to take a pass?
I'm on the. I would probably hammer the Cowboys, to be honest. I think the line's probably not enough. I think they, this has like 35-0 written all over it, 35-7, something like that. I mean, the Titans can't score to begin with. Now these guys are sitting. The Cowboys just played well. I mean, the Cowboys want to go into the playoffs trending up. I mean,
right.
The Titans at this point just trying to get in anyway. I mean, they're just trying to stem the. If they lose 6 in a row and then win next week and get in the playoffs, who cares what they did those weeks? I mean, they're in the playoffs, right. And Derrick Henry's running the ball and they have a chance. So, I think this is Cowboys are gonna. Annihilate them. I think. I might actually put that up as one of my plays right now in this game. So
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
You've heard it here first. He's definitely going to, move to that level. It's as we said a little earlier. Tua's got another concussion. He got it in the loss to the Packers. If you were Miami, are you concerned now that that the future of Tua is from a health standpoint? This kid's got 3 concussions in one season. Does that concern you if you're Miami? Yeah, not that you're going to jump on the David Carr train, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you get rid of him, but I would definitely be concerned about next season.
No, I wasn't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean get rid of him. What I'm saying.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Does he get to a point where? Do you see a point where where a guy like Tua decides, wait a minute, I don't want to be a vegetable in 3 years. We've seen what has happened to some of these guys who, unfortunately die in their 50s because of some of the concussions and head injuries they suffered, back in the day. And this is not back in the day, but, you can certainly get whacked in a situation like this. So that my concern is more of not will Miami want to get rid of Tua, is that what do we do in upgrading our backup system, which right now they have Teddy Bridgewater. Insurance policy time, I guess, would be the best way of putting it.
Yeah, I'd definitely be concerned if I were them, just because, three concussions is a lot. They definitely botched the situation early in the season with him. He ended up staying out all that time. But the fact that he's gotten another one now is either something's up with the protocols, or he's just, very prone to concussions. It doesn't take much to give him one, right? Maybe he's got, I'm not trying to sound mean. I mean, just maybe, he's got like a weaker skull or something like that. And then it takes a lighter hit for him to get banged up. And, obviously once you've had a concussion, it's a lot easier to get reconcussed as well. I know a lot of friends who played hockey would get a lot of concussions the same way, right? Very physical sport. So yeah, I'd definitely I'm concerned for his health. I would definitely be concerned if you're the Dolphins, just because, he could go out at any point now. I know they should shut him down. I'm not sure if they have made that decision yet, but I would shut him down for the rest of the season. I know Aaron Rodgers is on that train, but I would be very concerned for next season. Personally, I think Teddy Bridgewater is a good enough backup. It's just that, when he finally got his chance to shine and had to come in for Tua, he got injured on the first play too. So he's a very injury-prone guy too. I mean, I like him as a player, but you might need to get a guy who's a little more tougher,
a little more durable.
Yeah, exactly. Can sustain the injuries.
Since I'm so old, this was a problem back in the day for our buddy Troy Aikman. Aikman had a number of concussions, which is why he quit. And he just decided that was it. He had I think 5 or 6 concussions. That was at a time when people didn't really pay attention to it, right? They were more along the lines of they'd hold up fingers and say, how many fingers do I have up? And somebody sitting next to say 3, and you'd say 3, and they'd put you back in the game. So, Brian Rowe says that the only bowl game he's going to be betting on with serious money is maybe Michigan and TCU. That's an interesting game to me. This is a Jim Harbaugh team, and I'm skeptical a little bit of Jim's team, but then again, I'm not sold that TCU's a good team at all.
Yeah, TCU's a team I think only got in there because of the undefeated record, right? Look at them.
Right.
As you put it, they didn't win their conference championship. You went undefeated the whole regular season, and then you finally pick up a loss in the game that matters most.
Right.
So, and you could see it too. They were a team, this isn't a team I would call very strong throughout the season, because they were always making comebacks in the second half. And I mean, that's great. It shows resiliency, but maybe 2 or 3 times, not where it gets to the point where the whole second half of your season was falling behind and coming back in the second half. It's going to wear down on you eventually. Eventually you're going to go down and you're not going to be able to come back. And
you play a team like Michigan, you get down by 25 points, you might as well get on the bus and go to the hotel.
Well, look at what they did to Ohio State, who has the number 1 offense in the country. So when they played them, but yeah, I think Michigan's the real deal. I thought they were the real deal last year. I was happy to see them get into the playoffs. I was shocked people had Clemson as a Final Four team over them this year. I still thought Michigan was one of the best teams in the country. I thought they deserved the number 2 spot. And honestly, I think DJ transferring can only help Clemson, because he has held back their offense for 2 years now.
Right.
But notice the 2 years Clemson has been bad. He's been the starting quarterback, and Dabo has been so committed to him. But going back to Michigan here, I really like this Michigan team. And I think they're going to be more prepared this year. I think last year it was more of, their big step was, we finally beat Ohio State. We finally got to the Big Ten championship and won the title. That's all they cared about. Then they went to the playoffs, and it was all like, oh, this is so great. It was like a spectacle to them. And then they got destroyed. But now I think they came into the season expecting to beat Ohio State. They expected to win the Big Ten title again. And their goal this year was taking the next step and winning a playoff game. So I think so far everything's gone the way they've planned it, and I think they're coming in all business into this one.
Well, I've known Jim Harbaugh since he was a player, and I don't think I know a person who hates losing more than Jim Harbaugh. I mean, it doesn't matter what he's playing at, because his brother John, of course, coaching the Ravens. I know John too.
Beat him in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, beat him in the Super Bowl. That made for a very awkward Thanksgiving, I would think. Anyway,
basically ended his career in the NFL.
Right.
He was like, I'm going back to college after this.
I'm going out of here. I'm out. Tap me out. Send me back. And he's a Michigan man. So spending too many days up there at the big house, I can honestly tell you. Jim needed that initial win last year over Ohio State to get him to a point where he has the confidence. Don't get me wrong. There might not be a more confident person on the planet too than Jim Harbaugh, or that loves him more than himself. But all kidding aside, Jim needed that because that monkey was on his back. He got rid of it. And now, as you say, when they came to camp for spring practice, they expected to be in the Final Four. So I think that situation is just something that's going to have to be resolved on the field. But TCU, to me, you can't do it. You were just talking about falling behind and rallying, right? That's not something you're going to be able to do against a very good Michigan team.
Yeah, it's not the winning formula.
No. I mean, and again, it's okay if that's what you have to do to beat Kansas, right? And I'm not throwing shade on Kansas. Kansas had a good season this year, but it's not necessarily a good idea when you come and try to get something done against when you're fighting for a CFP championship. That's not a good combination.
Yeah,
I guess we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and this is a really good Michigan offense, but it's not like it's an explosive through the air offense.
Oh no,
it's a run it down your throat kind of offense, and you don't want to fall behind and then give the ball back to that offense where you might not see it for another 8 minutes.
Well, you just brought up the good point, right? You brought up a very key point, and that is Michigan burns clock. They make games shorter. So that means that you get the ball fewer times. And if you don't score in, one or two of those times, and they do, grinding out a long 5, 6, 7 minute drive, you're 14, 15, 17, 21 points behind, and you're only going to get the ball it's almost impossible to score the amount of points you're going to have to catch up with the amount of times you're going to get the ball back.
Yeah, and not only that, it's also tough to get into a rhythm because you get out there, you 3 and out, and then you don't get back on the field for another 8 minutes. You're not really in a rhythm until you're in like your third or fourth drive when it might be already 21-0.
Yeah, it's like, oh wait, well, I was watching that Oregon game last night, right? Yeah. You could see that with Bo Nix. They didn't have the ball for a while, and Bo Nix is, he's throwing, and credit to North Carolina and to Mac Brown. I mean, they lost pretty much their entire starting secondary, but Oregon couldn't get separation last night. And so Nix was having trouble, doing what Nix normally does because, Carolina was doing such a good job of press coverage on the wide receivers. But it was very much that rhythm. They got the rhythm back, in the fourth quarter, just in time to go down and score a winning touchdown with 19 seconds left. Only to have, that thing that we talked about earlier where the bonk off the extra point. The irony is that the guy who won the game by kicking the ball through the upright for the extra point was from Charlotte, North Carolina. So
Oh, wow.
you got to think that he probably played with or had friends on that North Carolina team. So the kid out of Charlotte kicks the extra point that knocks the North Carolina out of the tournament.
So you're
So,
telling me
there
he
you
was
go.
aiming for the goalpost and letting fate decide whether
Well, yeah, I was kind of
his
like,
hometown wins or his team wins.
right. It's like, will anybody in my town speak to me after this?
And now at least he can be like, "Hey, I tried to miss it, but that
Yeah,
post, man, that
right. But the
post."
damn post knocked it through. Yeah, I'm sure that's what the text chain is this morning on his phone.
I
It's
tried.
I tried, man.
Well, at least
uh,
like he figures he couldn't have lost the game for them, right? It's like if I miss the
no,
extra
no.
point, we go to overtime and it's out
Right.
of my hands. Let the
Well,
offense
it may
deal with
not be
it.
out of his hands if they need him for a field goal.
Obviously, but there's a better chance that it gets
right,
out of
right,
his hands. You know what I mean?
right. It's taken down, but no, I think that there's these fun little. I mean, like I said earlier, how many people would have thought that the starting quarterback and one of the top quarterbacks in the Pac-12 played football, high school football in Tampa, Florida? You would have not thought that. And you've got Kavis Slofus, who's the kid who started his career at USC, went to Pitt, and now is going to be the BYU quarterback. He's going to be that's 3 years, 3 different offenses.
Yeah, I don't get 3 years, 3 teams. Like, I know you want to go somewhere and start. That's going to be the best fit for you. But at some point, you got to just settle into an offense as well and get into a rhythm. You can't just keep moving around. You know what I mean? Unless you're obviously Jalen Hurts, who can, wins on 2 different teams in college and then goes to the NFL and almost leads the Eagles to an undefeated season.
Well, you've got you've got in this case you got Caleb Williams, who's coming back after winning the Heisman. He was at Oklahoma and decided he was going to go with Lincoln Riley over at SC, and Lincoln Riley proved that if you understand how to use the portal, you can turn a team around pretty damn quick.
Well, that's a little different, I think, because that was more like, they were together at Oklahoma, and it was like, I'm taking the job at USC. You coming with me, Caleb?
No, that's fair.
Right?
That's fair. No,
you're right.
Slovis
is kind of just like, I didn't like it here. I didn't have a good, or it was more like, oh, Lincoln Riley's coming in. I'm not the starter. He's coming in with Caleb. I better get out of here. And then he went to Pittsburgh and was like, I didn't have a great year here. I didn't like the offense. I'm going to go to BYU. So it's different. And as you said, there's different ways to use the transfer portal, right? And that's what we're obviously going to see is going to separate the good teams from the bad teams.
Well, and I look at, another guy who's used the portal, to his advantage, and it's an easy one to do, and that for him, and that's, Deion Sanders at Colorado.
Yep.
He's starting to.
The players will follow.
Yeah, it's hard to say no to Deion. I'll tell you that right now. And
people who tell them, oh, you can't win in Colorado, you can win when all the top high school prospects in the country want to come follow you there.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter what the school or location is.
No. It's I look at Bo Nix. Bo Nix is in Oregon. Who would have thunk it? He was a high school guy who was people at Alabama took a look at him. He was a Southeastern Conference guy, and he played 1 year at Auburn and decided, maybe I need to go somewhere. And his offensive coordinator went to Oregon, and all of a sudden, Bo Nix is in Oregon. So,
and you know what? He wasn't great on the road this year, but I got to give him a lot of respect because he was terrible at Auburn. And he really showed that, you can turn it around at a different school. You just got to make the right decision, obviously. But it's like a completely different person at Oregon.
Mm-hmm. And, Caleb Williams at SC, you have to remember in his case, great. It was good that they were able to, he was able to reconnect with Lincoln Riley. But Caleb Williams had 4 new receivers that weren't on the team when he got there. So that offense that SC put together was literally put together out of the portal and on the fly.
Yeah, and they were another team like Washington, where their defense was so bad they had to
Oh,
score
yeah.
all these points just to win games. But they were able to do it, man. They're great offense.
And
for sure.
that great game that they played against that basically lost them possibly they had a situation where they had they lost by 1 point to Utah. That was their only loss till they played Utah again in the championship game. But
2-point conversion always at the end of the game. You got to ruin it. Just send it to overtime.
Yeah, I mean that was a wild one.
Guys.
It's like we play to win or we play to lose. One way or the other, it's going to happen.
And it was so weird because normally the thing is you play for the tie at home and the win on the road. Utah was at home, but they were like, this team is so good, we're not going to overtime. We can't. We have a chance to win it right here with the offense. Let's just get the 2 points and do it.
Well, just in the proverbial, sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. What happened in that game, which happened earlier in the fourth quarter, is their kicker got ran into and hurt his leg. So I'm not so sure that they even had a backup plan for kicking the extra point. So that was something. Now, again, I don't know what happened. All I know is the place kicker for Utah was knocked out in that game in the fourth quarter. So make of it what you will. Yeah, make of it what you will. But I do think that they felt, meaning I'm talking about Utah, that the SC defense was so bad that there was no way they were going to stop them when all they had to do was get 2 yards.
Yeah.
And they had the tight end for Utah in that game had 265 receiving yards.
There you go. So, just throw it to the big guy in the end zone, and you're good.
Yeah, it was like a reuniting of Brady and Gronk. So, as I say, make of it what you will. It is what it is. But there you go, boys and girls. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? One quick aside. Happy to see my buddy Ed Reed has followed Dion's path, and he will be coaching Bethune-Cookman this year. And so Ed Reed, who can talk smack with the best of them, from the U, is headed to Bethune-Cookman to take over a coaching spot in an HBCU team. So good on you, Ed, and good luck to the folks at Bethune-Cookman. But Ed Reed is a coach. I'll say this: I didn't see that one coming, but I do wish him the best. He's a good guy.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll see him in the FBS.
You never know. I mean, didn't take Dion long to get there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Give him a few years, run up a reputation. You win a few titles, and all of a sudden, you're the next hot commodity.
Right, and the other thing with regard to Ed, like Dion, if he has success, you will know about it. Ed will not keep it quiet. So whatever good happens, you're gonna find out that it's gonna be for something that we all know and love. So we'll see how that plays out. Anyway, any final thoughts, my friend, before we get out of here?
Yeah, just have a happy Thursday. I mean, the board's not too great today, even the bowl games and the NFL games. So, let's just get to tomorrow.
Take a chill. Okay.
Yeah, just relax today. It's not a great board.
There you go. All right, everybody, have a great day. For Amadeus, I'm Jim Williams saying so long. We will see you tomorrow morning. Be with us tomorrow morning. Special information we're going to pass out for a watch party coming up on Saturday. So if you're a Georgia fan or a fan of Ohio State, then you'll have some place to be on New Year's Eve, and hopefully that'll be with us. So more on that tomorrow. And here we go. You guys have a great day. We'll see you in the morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.